Look at this map. We're right here. So
Where are we?
see all the blue, and then you see this patch of red up here?
Yeah.
We're right in this area right here, okay?
On the right-hand side.
What's happened, if you look at the far right of the Confederate line down here and you measure out about 1.5 miles, 1.25 miles, there's that huge gap. Very tempting, I would think, for a well-managed army, wouldn't you think? But nevertheless, Isaac Trimble will bring his men out here. The map that used to be here, I think maybe that one even shows it. It shows Walker's two regiment brigade coming out, and it was always interesting because he kind of does this to the point where you think maybe he had a little bit too much to drink the morning before or something. But the trail that they used to map him was he would actually kind of follow this road. I think he would hear something going on and move in, and then he'd be back out and then back in. And finally, Walker will end up in this area. And the reason they end up in this area is, and Jim tells a great story about, that's the exact, people will say, where was the artillery battery they were trying to capture up here? And I always, Jim would say, well, you see that tree right there?
Right there. That's
right
where
there.
Right there.
Right exactly at that tree. But Jim and I both know it's not exactly at that tree. But what we do know is that Walker and Trimble would both end up here. Trimble would be more over in this area, just this kind of a swampland beyond the hill. And then Walker would be over here. And their target would be an artillery battery that's located on that hill over there. And like I said, if you went from here to the other line, you're talking well over 1 mile to get there.
And it's really hard to tell, but you can see this hill rising, and it continues behind those trees, and we're blocked. Can't really, it would have been up on that hill.
Right.
As you see sloping here right in front of us, just a few hundred yards ahead of us. It slopes on up, and it's that hill that they're attacking.
It has the artillery.
It has
It
the
has
artillery.
Union artillery.
And where's the other Confederate line from here?
The rest of the Confederate Army would be back
That way?
there. Right.
Doesn't really.
So here's the gap that he was talking about.
The,
I mean, if you're lying
These
here,
guys here?
and they're over
these,
that.
we're right here.
I mean, is this the battery he's talking
No, the
about?
I
battery's
wish they'd
actually
cut
right
a few of these trees out. You
It's
could
not
actually see
depicted. I was looking at this.
Yeah.
It's not a good
it.
map.
The
It is a good
foundation
map. It's the
Yeah.
foundations map, but the ones
Must
that
have
we're
actually,
dealing with
one
actually
night got confused with that.
you have a little bit more detail.
Ask
All of
forgiveness.
these signs are new. There's one here, there's one here, and here. And of course, it used to be you could walk about 300 yards down there on the other side. It's down there. But you can't see anything in the trees down there.
Yeah, that's the
So
problem.
they've moved
They did
them all out
replace that.
here just recently as part of that 20, new signs that they put out. But anyways, the reason we bring you here is to kind of show you Walker is going to fail in taking the guns, and they're all going to end up retreating back from here, back to pretty much where they started. And then Isaac Trimble, during the evening, will get this idea that he'd like to launch a night attack on the Union Army up here.
So that's where we.
So he'll ride back to Jackson in Port Republic and say,
This is good.
sir, I've got this great idea. I'd like to launch an attack up here. And I'm thinking Jackson is exhausted, and he probably looked at him and said, go back to your unit. Because the night attack never happens, okay? And actually, you remember when we first started talking about all this, I had mentioned that at 8 o'clock, 8:30 in the morning, there'd been some firing way down in Port Republic.
Right.
And that's where we're going to go next. That's where Jackson nearly gets captured, okay? But anyways, there's a lot of activity going on in Port Republic in the morning, and this doesn't really get going until about 10 o'clock in the morning. So, and by the time we get to this point in the day, you're really early afternoon out here. But in the meantime, we've had an enormous number, considering the size of the battle. You've got 1,000 casualties here and about 800, on the other side. So it's a fairly, it's one of those battles that some historians say Jackson probably didn't have to fight here. He probably could have just crossed the bridge, burned it, and headed down. if he had been requested to get down to Richmond to help out down in the peninsula to do that. But you know what? Once Jackson got his mind made up that there was going to be a fight, I only know of one instance where Jackson actually changed his mind. And that's when he fired his cavalry commander, and 24 hours later he rehired him. And that never happens to Jackson. He never has a council of war.
Yeah,
And he always
One time, yeah,
one
time he did
and
it.
then he
He
changed his
said,
mind.
yeah, that was
he changed his mind about that.
Yeah.
He changed his
That,
mind.
that was on March 11th and 12th in that
Yeah,
overnight period.
before
And then
Kernstown.
after that, what did he say?
Never.
Never again. Yeah.
And so Jackson decided this battle was going to happen, and it did. And then the most costly battle that he would fight out here in his whole campaign would actually happen at Fort Republic over here the next day. So, but I wanted you folks to see this just so you have an idea. You know how far we just traveled.
Yeah.
Can you imagine sending out 2 brigades out here? And actually, I don't know if Dick Ewell, until he heard the firing, if he even knew he was out here, you know? Probably not. But Dick Ewell, they called him a crotchety old man. He gained some, well, okay. And Isaac Trimble had an even worse reputation.
Yeah.
The other thing about Trimble is we've not mentioned it. He's over 60 years old.
Yeah,
This is not a spring chicken out here running around, charging around. He's 60, 61 years old.
Yes.
Now, did those guys make it through the whole Civil War? Trimble and
Trimble did.
Yeah.
Trimble did. And
Ewell, he got fired at Silas Creek.
That's right.
Yeah.
He got
fired.
Fired, yeah,
I
they
think
had a
captured.
really bad day there.
Right at the
Yeah,
end of
most
it.
everyone was
And then
captured.
they
Yeah. You're dismissed, Dick. Go home.
Kind of like Early did.
Yeah, Early got fired out
Yeah.
out here.
Yeah,
No,
but that was near the end of the war.
yeah, it was
Oh,
near the
yeah.
end of the war. Yeah. So, anyways, can you picture this?
Yeah.
The fighting that's taking place. You've got 2 regiments desperately trying to get there. You've got a brigade down there with, trying to get out here as well. And it just gets to the point. The defense that's taking place here with the Union troops is actually pretty formidable. And those brigades are not going to get any farther beyond here. And over there, like we said, those troops got pulled back at the point where you kind of wonder if maybe they couldn't have been. I don't think anyone could have taken that hill, do you?
No.
I don't think so.
So now there it's.
So, are there any questions that we can answer? Or Jim, do you want to add anything?
No, we were just talking about in this attack, Trimble goes down to regimental command and and directs the 15th Alabama. He splits them into 2 battalions, and attacks the first battery, kind of trying to catch it front and rear, and that didn't succeed too well. So he kind of slid off to his right as these other troops came around, and eventually went back to brigade command, I guess.
Yes.
But for a time, he lost his head completely as a brigade commander. He dropped right down to regimental and said, "Okay, you have to go here. I want you to follow me." And he's got 2 other regiments that he's basically forgotten about in his excitement.
And then Walker is pretty much on his own.
And Walker's just chasing the sound of the
Yes.
guns.
And like I said, his trail out here is pretty awkward. It's like he can't really make up his mind if he's going to pull into attack, and then he pulls back out. But basically he follows this road out here until he gets here, and then he can see the artillery, and that's when he decides he's going to make his attack. Any questions?
the 21st Georgia doesn't come up here, is that right? 21st Georgia, is that?
They
Where
come
we
up
were
later.
before.
Yeah, they were back at that point at, of course, the 8th New York attack.
Right.
Right.
But then they stayed back. Well, Trimble again grabs a regiment, takes off.
Mhm.
So they're not called up till later. So that map may not show it. They do eventually catch up to the 15th.
And remember I said the Louisiana troops took off? In phase 1 they're not even shown.
Yeah.
But if you look down here on the phase 2 map in the bottom right, Dick Taylor's troops show up here, and then you see the arrow, they're sent back.
Yeah.
So they're here, they go there, they come here, and then they're sent back.
Sounds normal.
Sounds
Yeah,
normal.
pretty
Is that
SOP
So
for
that's right in that
Army.
area right there. And actually, like I said, you know, you were talking about the first, remember we saw the monument? The monument to the first Maryland is here, but they were actually placed here. So there's actually quite a distance between where they actually fought and where the monument ended up. And the reason that it's there is the foundation doesn't own the land or have access to the land over here, and they do here. But at least the monument was saved from being destroyed. So, this is pretty dangerous, but I'd like to get back to Port Republic, okay? When we go back, we'll go through town, and we'll cross the North River. It's gonna be slow because there's a light there, the bridge is under construction. We'll go through, there's Main Street, and the next street is Water Street. And what I'd like to do is to turn right on Water Street. There is a public park right there. And we'll stop there and we'll talk about Jackson's narrow escape. We'll see the bridge and everything. There is another bathroom down there, if you need it, okay? It's not a tree, it's actually a bathroom. And look,
I think it even flushes and everything. If I
well,
remember.
it does. And I checked the other day, there's plenty of toilet
No,
paper.
okay.
Most essential, yeah.
Okay, sorry about the toilet paper situation back there. So what we would do is we're going to go down here to the bottom of the hill. There's there's Mill Creek. We're going to make a sharp right-hand turn. Don't be intimidated. There's a big compound on your right-hand side. It's guarded. Nobody knows what goes on in there. No, just kidding. It's somebody actually is fairly wealthy, owns a large compound. We're going to come out there and get back on the Port Republic Road and make a left, okay?
Yeah.
As we go down, there's a farm on the right.
How many men did Walker
There's-
lose when he flanked around
There
to
are
take
some
that down?
camels there, okay? Has nothing to
Must
do
have
with
come
the
right
war.
through here because
Yeah.
there's been fragmentations of cannonball found right here.
Could very well have been.
About
Yeah,
100 feet across the fence here.
Wow.
that sounds about right.
That sounds about right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, he was saying that there was cannonball found right here.
yeah, right across the fence here, about 100 feet, there's a couple fragmentations of cannonball.
Oh, wow.
So Walker must have flanked right through here because he was over here according to the map.
Yes. Mhm.
Trimble, let me see, Trimble sent him over there to take out that one artilleryman and wouldn't retreat. When Ewell said retreat, Fremont said retreat because he's afraid to lose his guns.
They were ultimately aiming for
And it was a natural pond.
it.
that
They
would've
were all
been-
trees, that's
See
where the
that tree
artillery
line way on
was
up
that
over
we
the
went
hill,
to.
there's a natural
This
pond
road
there.
right in
Right
here.
It was
Yes.
That's way,
what, 3 batteries
that
or
hill.
6 batteries,
That's where we
artillery,
started.
battery
That's right,
troops
the
are-
artillery.
All the way up in the distance?
Yeah.
Yeah.
If
The
a
hill
wolf,
that they're
But that's been
attacking,
drained
see how
down
this
now.
goes
My
up
daddy
gradually?
drained that
Yeah.
It would have been just behind those trees where the
I mean, if
artillery
you're going to
was.
attack a position here,
Yeah, that's
it
exactly
makes a lot of sense to kind of come in a partial, you know, partial section of the hill here,
Yeah.
down in that valley.
Yes. There's new signage here.
oh yeah.
And like I said, what I'd like to do because of time, you folks can always come back. You're certainly welcome to come back. But I'd like to get us down and into Port Republic, okay?
Okay.
Sounds
So get down here, we're going to make a sharp right. Another one of those. And we're going to go across the bridge that says only one car can pass at a time.
Yeah.
Trust me,
Yeah.
it's true.